Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Intuition Activation Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, a spiritual medium and intuitive coach, and I'm so excited that you're here to join me for this intuitive development journey. And guys, I am so excited for this episode. I think I say that every week, but I am really excited for this one. And the title, I think I titled it Five Quick and Easy Ways to Communicate with Your Guides When You're Short on Time, because this has been so relevant for me for the last couple of weeks. As many of you know, I've been going through a little bit of a realignment myself. A few weeks ago, I got knocked on the head thanks to my little son, and I really saw that as my spirit guides kind of saying, hey, wake up. You're not in alignment. You're not on your path. You haven't been listening to us. And so I have really been trying to be a lot more intentional about paying attention to my guides and the messages they're sharing with me, but more importantly, putting those things that they've been sharing with me into action. Because I do want to argue that I do listen or hear my guides fairly often, but I don't necessarily listen to what they have to say. Sometimes I get in my own way. I get in my own thoughts. Weigh the pros and cons and don't necessarily jump and leap right when my guides are telling me to do something. Which, I'm still human. So lately I've really just been blind faith leaning into everything that my guides are telling me to do. And what's interesting about it is that it's not necessarily that I gained more time in order to carve out the time to sit and, meditate and create a ritual to connect with my guides. And I think a lot of us believe that in order to connect with our guides on a daily basis, we have to sit and meditate and light a candle and do all of the things and have this full carved out quiet window to communicate with our guides. And what I'm learning, and I have been kind of learning since, especially since I had kids, but even more so over the last few weeks, is that is so not the truth. Is that what the truth is that your guides are with you all of the time, every step of the way, and they are constantly communicating with you through signs and symbols and messages, and they're always sending messages your way. And what's more important is, do you have your eyes wide open? Are you looking around? Are you paying attention? Are you asking to be in consistent and constant communication with your guides? And so today's episode is all about how you can go about continuing that conversation with your guides, allowing them to send messages to you throughout your day instead of having to carve out a time to sit in deep, heart centered meditation with them, which, of course, every once in a while is a really, really great practice to have. And definitely for me, when I was first developing my gifts, I didn't have kids. I was in my early 20s. I had all the time in the world to go for these long, beautiful walks in the forest and find that perfect place where nobody would hear me and do a very long, sometimes 45-minute to an hour guided meditation that I would listen to. Then I would light some Palo Santos and then I would call in my guides. And, my husband would always ask me, where did you go? I would say I'm going for a walk in the forest and then not come back till 2, 3 hours later. And I would just be practicing and channeling. And I totally recognize that many of us do not have that luxury, the luxury of time to be sitting and doing that. Definitely for the moms out there, I know that your time is very limited. And also for those of you who are not so super big into meditation, I don't want you to feel like this means that you cannot connect with your guides. And so, what I'm going to share with you today is the ways in which my guides have been connecting with me and that I've been communicating with them, and how we've been continuing the conversation with each other, even though I haven't really been able to carve out very big, long chunks of time to communicate with them. And so I want to share with you some ways in which I've been doing that over the last few weeks. And guys, I'm so serious that there has been so many synchronicities, so much magic that has shown up in my life over the last couple of weeks, where because I finally opened my eyes enough to pay attention and to invite my guides into many more aspects of my life. I used to have such much stronger boundaries with my guides than I did before. And possibly because when I was younger, maybe there was still a little bit more fear around it. Maybe there was a little bit more of, I didn't want to be bombarded with messages unless I was channeling. And now I've invited my guides to come and be with me every step of the way, to send me messages, to talk to me, even when I'm in public, even when I'm out and about. I want my guides to be connecting with me and communicating with me at all times because I always want to be in alignment. I always want to be making decisions and choices that are for my highest good. And since I started doing that, which I'll argue was only recently, that I've been inviting my guides into every conversation, into every aspect of my life, has this complete beautiful magic been showing up in my life. And so I'm also going to be sharing the very specific ways that my guides have shown up for me in the last couple of weeks as I've been kind of going on this realignment journey. Because I did hit a very small rock bottom, and I did need to find my way back into alignment and find my way back to what feels good for my family. And I'm still slightly on that journey, but definitely I've been really, really supported by my guides in the last few weeks. And I'm excited to share with you how I've been doing that so that you can start applying some of these things to your life too. So let's get started. Let's talk about these 5 quick and easy ways that you can connect with your guides or communicate with them on a consistent basis without needing to carve out any time. So the first one that I've really been incorporating into my life lately is to send your questions out to your guides and let the answer come back to you in signs, symbols, or coincidences. Now, this is something I've really been putting to the test lately. And what does this look like? This looks like if you have a dilemma or a decision or something that you're needing, a decision you need to make, something you're wondering about, you're not sure about the next right move, you just don't know what to do in a specific scenario, say it out loud and send the question out to your guides. So spirits of the light, spirit guides, what do I do about this? Right? Send it out to them. Or is this the right choice? Right? What do we do? What do I do? What feels right for me? What do I need to know? Right? And just say it out loud. Say to your guides, what do I do about this? And then let the answer come back to you in your regular life. A sign is going to show up, a symbol is going to show up. The answer is going to come to you in usually the least expected way. And it's going to be so clear. And it's not through meditating. It's the answer. It's not in that moment. It's sort of like later on in your day or later on in your week, you're going to get the answer and you're going to feel like it was a sign and it was a symbol and it was so clear. So I'm going to share with you the example that I have had that I most recently experienced, and it felt so wild and so magical. And so my husband and I were sitting and sort of think and talking about our finances. We try to have kind of a biweekly meeting of where our financial goals and our financial planning and all of those kinds of things. And we really started to seriously talk about potentially moving out of Canada. And I know some of you have heard this on the podcast before. That, one of the things that my guides have sent into my field, which I never necessarily dreamed for myself, was that we might be moving to Costa Rica. That this is where my guides keep leading me to go. They keep telling me this is where we're going to end up. And so my husband and I sat down and I said, "How do you feel about this? Do you feel like this is a move for us? Like, do you think that this is something we should do?" It was never on my radar. It was never on his radar. It was not something that was sort of in our dream and our life plan. To be quite frank, our next big thing that we were saving for and planning for was to buy a cottage or a lake house a couple hours north of where we currently live and have a beautiful lake house little vacation home here in Canada, just a couple hours north in the countryside of where we currently are. And so, and to maybe have a homestead, get a couple of chickens and goats, right? We were never really planning to leave Canada. And so this idea that's been coming from my guides through meditation, I'll argue. I was doing a future self meditation, and that's where this has come up, is every time I visualize myself in the future, they keep showing me in this beautiful jungle in a tree house, essentially, pregnant with my third baby and surrounded by nature in a beautiful place like that feels like Costa Rica. And so I brought it up to my husband and I said, what do you think about this? What do you feel about this? And he was really sort of like, "I'm open to it. I'm on the fence about it. I don't know he doesn't know anything about Costa Rica. He's never been there. I haven't been there since I was a kid. I went with my family when I was in maybe 11th grade or something. So I haven't been back in many, many years. Definitely not as an adult. So my memory of it is very faint. And yeah, and so we kind of just went, I have no idea if this is something we should be pursuing or if this is just something further down the road and my guides are just planting the seed now. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put it to my guides. I'm going to ask my guides and let them share with me, is this something that we should be pursuing or seriously looking into right now? And so I said it out loud, literally sitting in front of my husband, spirit guides, if we're meant to move to Costa Rica and we're supposed to start really putting some effort towards making this happen, let us know. Show me a sign. Let us know if this is what we're supposed to be doing. And then we just let it go. We went on with the rest of our day. We had things to do and we went off to work and I went off to watch the kids and that was it. And then the next day I was alone with the kids and it was a really, really cold day. And I think that I can't remember if I just suddenly felt compelled to take the kids to the park. I think what was going on rather was that my 2-year-old was bouncing off the walls, and I kind of went, we got to get out of the house, right? We're driving each other crazy. Let's go get some fresh air. So I bundled the kids up and I took them to the playground. And I remember texting some of my neighbor friends. We have a couple of moms in the neighborhood who we usually try to meet up with if we are ever heading to the park. Nobody was available. They didn't want to go out in the cold or they just weren't around. So I was like, all right, it'll just be me and the kids. We'll go to the playground. And so we go, and it's particularly freezing and windy. And part of me is kind of going, why are we here? But I just kind of went, all right, well, it's fresh air. We'll stay for as long as we can. If we get too cold, we'll go home again. And so we were playing in the little woods there. There's a little kind of forested area right next to the forest, right next to the park. And this woman who I'd never seen before comes along with her 2 little kids, who are about the same age as my 2-year-old. And maybe she had a 2-year-old and another baby. And she had this um, really cool double stroller. And I remember, and the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, I've been looking for a double stroller. That one's really cool. And so I go up to her and I just start talking to her. Where did you get this stroller? It's amazing. And so we get to chatting, and she's new to the neighborhood, and her kids, one of her sons had was also named Benjamin, right? My Benny is short for Benjamin, and so we just we got chatting, and I noticed that she had an accent, and so I asked her. I said, I noticed you have an accent. Where exactly are you from? And she goes, oh, I'm from Costa Rica. Guys, chills all over my body. What are the chances that I would run into a stranger that I've never met before at our playground in our park who happens to be from Costa Rica? And she just moved here from Costa Rica. Her husband's from Canada, and they met in Costa Rica because he was there learning. He was there for work, I believe, and she was, and they met up because she was wanting to learn more English. So I guess they were put together for some sort of language learning program or something, and they met and they got married. But they decided that her husband had a better job here in Canada, so they decided to come to Canada temporarily, sort of make their fortune, and then move back to Costa Rica and retire early. And so as soon as she said that she was from Costa Rica, first of all, I went, oh my goodness, there's my sign. There's my sign. Those are my guides sort of telling me, like, yes, this is something you're supposed to pursue. Because, guys, I'm telling you, when I say that my husband and I live in the middle of nowhere, we really do. We live in the middle of nowhere. We live about an hour and a half out of Toronto. Um, this is not like this is a very small town where we live. Most of the people who live here, although it's starting to change, most people who live here are like fifth, sixth generation Canadian. There's not that many immigrants in this part of where in this little town that we live in. So it's very rare to sort of run into someone from somewhere else here. And so that felt like a big sign, and that sort of felt like confirmation. And then when I started telling her that my husband and I are thinking about moving there, she kind of just started giving me all the information. She goes, "Oh my goodness, yes, we're definitely going to be moving back there. Let me give you some information about, where you should consider going." And we've since become friends. We exchange numbers. We've gotten the kids together to play, and she's been helping me as I now kind of heard from my guides. Okay, I guess I need to pursue this. And so, guys, this was my sign, right? I wasn't meditating. I was in my regular life playing at the park with my kids. And the guides gave me a sign by literally sending me a woman who was from the place that I was considering going, and then suddenly was this wealth of knowledge. And she's been so helpful in us sort of even determining where in Costa Rica we should even consider looking at moving to. So that was a really big sign. And guys, this has happened to me a couple of times in the past as well. When I was considering doing a free birth for my son Benny, and so an unmedicated birth or unassisted birth. And I was still on the fence whether I should or I shouldn't. I also ran into a woman at our playground who had done just that a couple weeks prior, or a month or two prior. And she was somebody who lives in our neighborhood, and we have since become friends now. But I was kind of on the fence of like, do we, don't we do this? And when I ran into someone who then shared with me that that's exactly what she did, it was like the sign for my guides of like, yes, you can do this. And here's the sign. And so this is what I mean by coincidences coming up. Like, what are the chances that I would run into somebody who's from the place I was considering moving a day after I asked my guides? Or what are the chances that I run into somebody who did free birth in my neighborhood that is not necessarily full of really crunchy, out there people. And again, seeing that as a sign that this is my guides confirming for me that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, that yes, you are on the right path and here's some resources. And in meeting those people, they often acted as a resource for me. They've given me the information and the confidence I needed to pursue the thing and to research more. So that's one way that it can come up. Um, it can also come up when you put the question out to your guides as sort of signs or symbols, and this can be, and this one kind of, I think this one for the skeptics out there, they're maybe not going to agree with this one so much because I always say, there's this idea of like our phones are always listening to us. And so if you start talking about something, like suddenly your Instagram ads or the feeds that show up on your Instagram or your social media accounts are exactly based on the things that you're talking about. But I do want to say that even those things are maybe not necessarily coincidence, right? Why specifically? Maybe the keyword shows up, and that's why, or your phone heard the keyword, and that's why those ads are coming up. But why specifically that program, right? Or that particular thing that's being advertised for you? It is your guide sending you a message, right? Maybe it just so happens that the commercial that you see on the TV show that you're watching is related or has the word or based on the thing that you are wondering about. So it could show up that way, right? Or it could be something that comes in the mail. It could be a conversation that you overhear when you're walking by some people. It could be the very conversation that you have with a random stranger out in public at the food court. I don't know, or at a restaurant, right? And it just so happens that they say the thing that you've been thinking about. Guys, those are not coincidences. Those are confirmations from your guide that you're on the right path and this is what you're supposed to pursue. So pay attention to those things. Pay attention to the conversations that come up randomly in your regular day. Pay attention to the people that you suddenly meet. Um, these are all your guides sending you signs, symbols, coincidences, and messages to answer your questions. And I really find that the more I put these questions out to my guides, say it out loud, and ask them for clarity, they always send me back and place me in a scenario where I happen to be speaking to somebody or hear a conversation or see a sign or symbol or ad that confirms for me what it is that I was thinking of doing. So that's been a really big one for me. So that's number one. Send out the question and let the answer come back to you in your regular life in the way of signs, symbols, and coincidences. Number two, this one's a little bit different. This one is more about your guides communicating with you and trying to send you a message without you necessarily asking a question. So number two is pay attention to the creatures that cross your path. And when I say creatures, I literally mean creatures. I mean animals, ladybugs, bugs, and stray cats, right? Animals, squirrels, whatever, birds, whatever animals sort of cross your path. But I don't just mean in the distance. I mean, come into your space, come very close. Maybe they're random. They don't typically cross your path in that way. These are all messages from your guides. The animal world is very much in conjunction and very closely related to the spirit world. And so when animals cross your path unexpectedly, those are always messages from your guides. And maybe it's a message that your guides have been trying to share with you, but you haven't heard, or maybe you haven't had a chance to sit and meditate and hear your guides. And so this is them trying to send you a message, a warning, a prediction, a symbol of what you need to know or what you need to hear. So this, guys, has been coming up for me so much lately. It's actually been crazy. And really in the way of ladybugs, which is so crazy. And I promise you, we do not have a ladybug infestation. But lately, Every time I go, so every evening, it's either mine or my husband's job. Once the kids are in bed, one of us goes and kind of cleans up the kitchen and gets it reset for the next day. We usually kind of let the kitchen go and just let it be crazy throughout the day. We're too busy managing the little boys. And then when they're both asleep, we can actually focus on, doing the dishes and wiping the counters and doing all the things. And so my husband's been sick this week. And so really it's kind of been on me the last couple of days. And I kid you not, guys, every single day, this has been now 4 days in a row since I've gone down to go and clean the kitchen. In the same spot on my kitchen countertop, there has been a ladybug every single time. And I know it's not the same ladybug because every time I see the ladybug, I will lovingly scoop it up and let it go back outside, take it back outside. And lo and behold, every night, almost at the exact same time, I find a ladybug in the exact same spot on my kitchen counter. Guys, this can't be a coincidence. And so what do you do when you get these signs? Like, what does it mean to see a ladybug? And this is where, and I don't often tell people to go and Google the answers, right? I usually will try to encourage you to trust your intuition. What does a ladybug represent for you? This is one of those cases when an animal or creature is crossing your path where it's okay to really go and Google it and type in spiritual meaning of the animal that you're seeing that crosses your path. So for me, that's what I did. I went and Googled, what does ladybug mean? What does it mean to see a ladybug cross your path? And the the overall consensus is that it means good luck or good fortune. Usually a symbol of financial abundance coming your way, or just good luck coming your way. And um, I then had to sort of think back as to why this is particularly relevant in my life at this particular moment. And I realized because I've been facing a bit of I don't know if you would call it a crisis, but definitely an identity shift at the moment where I've really been listening to my guides, and my guides have really been pushing me to pare back and pare down, peel back and pare down on my business. They've been asking me to take away certain things, to get rid of certain things, to take away certain income streams in order to focus on others. And there's been a lot of fear in that for me, fear of whether my income is going to take a hit if I do that. And not really wanting to, or hesitantly listening to my guides, right? Listening and taking their advice, but being very sort of wary of why they've been asking me to do that. And while it hasn't been fully clear as to why they're telling me to do that, some of it is definitely because I've had way too much on my plate and I haven't been able to give the time and headspace to my family that I've been wanting to. And so definitely it's been helpful for me to really peel back the layers and take some things off of my plate. But in doing that, I've definitely had some worry about, well, where's my income going to come from? And so seeing these ladybugs are sort of my in my belief, it's really my guides reassuring me, don't worry. Good luck is on your way. Financial abundance is still going to come through. You don't need to push so hard in your business for those things to align. And that's been so comforting to kind of receive that message. And once I finally made the final decision of what I was going to peel back in my business, what I was going to cut out, I kind of sat there and I told my husband, okay, I've made my final decision. I actually spoke to my therapist about it. I spoke to my husband about it. I spoke to my business coach about it. As I was trying to make this decision and really kind of going, this is what my guides are saying, and I'm not sure if I should do it. And finally, kind of just agreeing to listen to my spirit guides. And so when I finally made the decision, okay, I'm going to cut back on this one thing and I'm going to put my energy in this other thing. And then seeing all of these ladybugs, as soon as I made the decision, a whole bunch of opportunities popped up for the thing I decided I was going to focus on. And new income streams kind of just started flooding in the one area that I decided to focus on. And so even though I was worried about cutting back on the other ones, I was being told that don't worry, the money's still going to come in. And so that one was really beautiful for me. And I do want to say for this one, when I say like when animals cross your path to go and Google what the spiritual meaning is, when you do go and Google it, oftentimes you will see that certain animals can represent a lot of different things and the answers might vary or there might be multiple answers. And that's when you really kind of have to use your intuition and lean into which of the answers that is popping up actually relates to my particular situation and scenario, and which one feels good for me. So you do have to be a little bit more intuitive in terms of the research there because I could have googled ladybugs, and there's also one opinion that believes that ladybugs mean that a new romantic relationship is coming in. And for me that seems incredibly irrelevant, right? I'm happily married going on 6 or 7 years at this point. And so not looking for a new romantic relationship. And so that wouldn't make any sense in my life. But the fact that the majority of the answers did also show that it means good fortune in terms of the financial aspect, that made a lot of sense to me. And so it's just crazy how the ladybug is like, it's like in case you weren't sure that that first one was just a coincidence, it's going to show up again and again and again and again in the same spot at the same time every day, 4 days in a row. I'm still flabbergasted. I'll let you know if it happens again tonight. I couldn't believe it happened 4 days in a row in the exact same spot at the exact same time, even though I've taken the ladybug outside every time. So that's just crazy to me. So that's number 2 is pay attention to the creatures that cross your path. If they show up in unexpected ways, if there's a random stray cat that crosses your front porch, or, I don't know, a bird that comes too close to your windshield, right? Or is just sitting outside one window that you look out all the time. Those are messages from your guides. That's them offering you reassurance, offering you a message, offering you with some confirmation that you're kind of aligned or not. So pay attention to those. Now, number 3 does take a little bit more time, but I definitely have been using this one a lot lately. So, number 3 is go for a walk in nature and talk to your guides out loud. Now, this looks a whole lot more like having a conversation with yourself or having a conversation with your guides rather than sitting in a deep, quiet meditation and waiting to hear or see or feel something from your guides. This looks a lot more like going out, and you can put earbuds in if you want to, so or hold up a phone so it looks like you're talking on the phone. But literally this looks like calling in your guides and then starting to talk to yourself as if you were answering your own question. Now, this is what I'll do, and I've been doing this a lot lately. I'll take the baby with me. Sometimes that I find the baby sleeps better when he's in the stroller. So I'm going to multitask. I'm going to take the baby, or sometimes I'll strap him onto me, and we'll go on a nature hike instead. And my husband will be busy with our 2-year old, and I will just go for a walk in the forest, and then I'll say, "Spirits of the light, are you here with me?" Or "Spirit guides, come and join me as I'm walking through the forest." And sometimes I'll just say, "What do you need me to know in this moment?" And then I'll just start talking. Sometimes I'll hear a voice inside my head. It's my own voice inside my own head. And I'll start to narrate the thoughts that are coming through in that moment. And I have to trust that whatever thoughts are coming through in that context, the context of I just invited my guides into this conversation. So whatever I'm hearing in my head in that moment, I am trusting is a channeled message from my spirit guides. So I will just kind of whisper to myself and as if I was giving myself advice in that moment. What do I need to hear? What do I need to know? What thoughts are coming up? And it surprises me how these are not things that I was necessarily worried about 10 minutes prior, right? It's new things that are coming through. So often when I'll do this, I'll just walk through and I don't have a particular question. You can do this with a particular question. Spirit guides, what do I do about this or that? But for me lately, I've just been going into the forest and saying, Spirit guides, what do you need me to know? What do you need me to know today? And oftentimes lately, my guides have been just giving me some advice on self care and personal care. They kind of say, Jessica, you forgot to take your vitamins today. Like you're a little low on iron. Make sure you go and take your vitamins, right? Um, so those kind of things have been coming up. Sometimes they'll tell me little things like don't forget to take the wipes with you when you go to the play group with your kids later this afternoon. I've been forgetting to do that a lot lately, and Benny's been having blow ups. It's been real fun. So bring extra clothes for him when you go. And so like lots of little things that just like my guides need me to know. And sometimes they'll tell me bigger things. Sometimes they'll tell me some things about my business. They kind of tell me, they'll tell me like to send a particular email to a particular person that I hadn't been thinking about doing, or they'll tell me a new inspiration of what a podcast should be the next podcast should be about, or, it's just whatever wants to come through. And so I'll just say, Spirit guides, what do you need me to know? And when it comes through, thank you. What else? Right? Thank you. What else? And I'm really just like standing there as if I'm talking to myself, stream of consciousness, whatever messages come through. And one has really been so helpful for me because it's sort of like doing a journal entry, kind of like an automatic writing situation without actually having to sit and journal. I can just walk, I have the baby, I'm, multitasking, so to speak. Sometimes I've done it even when I'm walking the dog. But because I know in the context, I've asked my guides, what do you need me to know? Whatever comes through, whatever comes to mind in that moment is what my guides are needing me to know. And so I've been trying to do this at least once a day, and it has been so helpful in keeping me on track and helping me realign and do some things that are quite helpful and moving the needle forward, moving things forward in my business. And so it's really, really a fun one. And definitely, I have been leaning into this one a lot lately. And sometimes my guides will give me tasks that I wasn't expecting to do. The other day, they asked me to email I had a particular topic that I wanted to do for the podcast, but I didn't know who I was going to interview to do it. And I was just like, I kind of put it out there of like, oh, well, I'm sure it'll come to me. I have no idea who could be an expert on this topic, and who would talk to me about this. And then when I went into the forest and asked and just said, guides, what do you need me to know? This person's name popped up, and they said, email this particular person. They'll definitely interview for you on the podcast to share this particular on this topic. And so that's what I did yesterday. I emailed the person, would you be interested in doing this particular podcast episode with me? And they emailed back almost immediately, so excited. I was just thinking about you, and I couldn't figure out why I was thinking about you because I didn't need a session in this moment. And they said, absolutely, I would love to do this podcast with you. So, yeah, just like little tips, little winks or nods of what I should be doing in my life. So that one's been really fun for me. So that's number 3. Go for a walk in nature. Talk out loud to yourself as if you're having a conversation with yourself. And whatever thoughts come through, just say them out loud and narrate them. So number 4, this one I've also really been leaning into a lot. And this one is this one I'm calling Lean Into Your Gut. And the truth is, usually when we are stuck between two choices, we know the answer. We know the answer that feels most aligned for us. What stops us from making that choice is all of the noise, all of the things that we can logic our way out of why we should choose the other thing, why it's best for everybody else to choose this thing, the context feels best for everybody else. But we always know what's best for us. Our gut will always tell us, even if it doesn't always make logical sense. Even if the pros and cons list doesn't match up to what our gut is telling us, we know what feels better. So with this one, it's sort of like when you're trying to make a decision, give yourself 2 very clear options. Should I do option A or option B? And then lean into which one feels best in your body. Which one makes your shoulders drop, your heart open, feels like the weight of the world is coming off of your shoulders, makes you feel like you can breathe a little easier, right? The opposite of that is when I think of picking the other choice, right? Maybe that's how option A makes me feel, and maybe option B makes me feel constricted. Maybe it feels like butterflies in my tummy or my shoulders curling in, me wanting to go inward, maybe my stomach kind of hurting or my heart fluttering, right? That's a sign that maybe it's not for me. Your body always knows what you truly want. And so lean into that. Give yourself 2 very specific choices and go and lean into the one that feels good despite what logic tells you. Now, I'm going to give you my example for this one because this one has been hard for me to listen to sometimes because we really can look at how things look on paper and let that get in the way of the actual choices we need to make. So I'm going to give this example that many of you know that I have been on this journey for sure of determining and figuring out what childcare looks like in my family. Everybody knows that I have always had the strongest intention of homeschooling my children. And on the same note, I also love being a spiritual medium and do need some time every once in a while to channel for clients and work with clients and create this podcast. And up until now, My husband and I have been juggling that between the 2 of us, and we just haven't had any time for ourselves. It's either he's working or I'm working, and when one's working, the other one's with the kids and vice versa. And we were, quite frankly, suffocating ourselves and drowning. We just never had breathing room for it. We never had time for each other. We barely had time for our businesses, and we were just running ourselves into the ground. So we kind of came to this realization that we need some help. We need to call in some help, and we need to find a place that we can send our older son, for a couple of hours a day, just so that we can have some breathing room. And so we were looking into some daycare options for him. And I had 2 beautiful home daycare options that kind of came our way. Well, one beautiful one that came my way and another one that I was really not expecting. So, the first one, this one showed up on an Instagram ad, right? And again, guys, I'm not joking. Trust the Instagram ads that come your way. Those are your guides sending you messages. They really are. So, this came in as an Instagram ad, and it was this beautiful home daycare that she was calling a forest school. It was like a Montessori forest school, and it was like everything that I would have dreamed of. It was kind of similar to the values that we implement in our own home. Lots of these beautiful wooden toys, and they spend all this time in this beautiful forested nature conservation next to her home. Beautiful woman, Montessori trained. Really, really, it seemed like the most ideal scenario, ideal situation. Very small group. She can only accept 5 children. Um, and I thought this was going to be the place that I was going to send my son Noah to. And everything on paper just aligned with my values. It made so much sense to send our son there for a couple of hours every morning. And we went to go and visit this place. And as soon as we walked in, something in my gut went, you're not sending your son here. Can't. And I couldn't figure out why. My husband, my husband was like ready to sign the papers to sign him up. And I went, no, we can't. And we left that place and he goes, what's wrong? Like, why won't you sign the papers? Why won't, like, this is a perfect place for him. And I went, something in my gut is telling me this is not the place for him. He's not going to be happy here. And there's something just telling me that this is not the right fit. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't tell you why. Logically, on paper, it looked perfect, right? And I still to this day can't tell you why this didn't make sense for him. I still couldn't figure it out. And so I just said, I'll put it to the guides. I know that there will be another option that will come our way. And so we let it go. And lo and behold, a couple days later, again, we were at the playground. I don't know why all my guides always send me messages or signs and things at the playground, but here we are. One of our neighbors whose kids my son plays with quite often whenever we go to the park, lovely, lovely individual, knew that we were kind of looking for some childcare options. And he sends his 2 daughters to this beautiful home daycare, again, that only has 5 kids. But up until now, as far as I knew, they were full. And, he came up to me. He actually came running up to me because his house is right near the park. So when he saw that I was at the park, he ran out of his house and ran up to me. And he said, Jessica, I need to tell you this. One of the kids that was at our kids' home daycare, he left. He got accepted into a different school and they moved him to another daycare. There's one spot open and they're going to fill it fast. And I told them to wait because I know you need a place for your son. And I was like, "Oh my goodness. Okay." Like, I don't know. I don't know. And I normally would not have chosen this particular type of daycare. It was one of the government subsidized ones, which actually financially is fantastic because it's really, really cheap. The government covers most of the cost. But that I'm not normally into conventional things, right? And I typically would gravitate towards something a little bit more crunchy, if you will. And I kind of went, well, it can't hurt to go and check it out. So we went and we took Noah there. And the woman who runs it was just so beautiful. She's like this sweet grandmother, so sweet, so loving. And all of the kids, and I didn't know this, all of the kids who go there are kids that he plays with in our neighborhood. They are his friends already. He knew them all. He knew all of the other 4 kids. And the second we walked through the door, he was like, there's my friend. And he just walked in and started playing. And so I talked to the woman who runs the place, and she was so warm and loving and inviting. And Noah was like, bye, mom. When are you leaving? Because I want to stay here and play with my friends. And I just knew this is the place. This is the place for my son. This is the place where he needs to go. And so again, logically, when we talk about sort of like the things that felt best for me on paper, the other place seemed like my ideal place for my son. Still to this day, I would tell anybody to send their child there. It seems like a beautiful, amazing place. And something was telling me in my gut that it wasn't the place for my son, and I couldn't figure out why. And when I did get this opportunity where somebody like literally handed it to me and said, there's one spot left, right? It's very hard to get kids into these government subsidized places. People want to, there's waiting lists that are sometimes 6 months to 2 years long because people want to have the financial break that it has. And so the fact that we're only paying like $15 a day for my son to go here is also just so ideal. Um, but again, it came to me. It just came to me, and otherwise, he would have been on a wait list to get into a place like this. And so, um, yeah, again, but my gut and my heart, like they just opened up when he walked through the front door because I know all of the mothers who send their kids to this place, and Noah knew all of the kids, and he just feels at home there. And that was just so beautiful for me. So, yeah, trusting your gut, leaning into it. That one was a big magical one. And for those of you who are interested, Noah did start daycare this week, and it has been so beautiful. That is how I'm recording this podcast this week today because he is at daycare, and I have the time and space to actually get some work done today while the baby is napping, and it's just been so lovely to have that breathing room. So yeah, lean into your gut. Trust that your body knows what the right answer is for you, even if logic tells you otherwise. And the last one, and this one is this one maybe is kind of like the one that encapsulates all of us, all of the things, but this one is trust that there are no coincidences. There are no coincidences. Your guides are always pushing you in the right direction, whether you are willing to listen or not. They're always trying to get you into the right position. They're always putting you in the right place and time so that you can get the messages they're trying to share. Trust those gut feelings or those gut instincts that tell you to do something different and put you in a different place at a specific time because the coincidences always happen. So, similar to every time that I've felt compelled to go to the park, I have gone because I've always gotten magic that way. I meet somebody or run into somebody who offers me a message, a sign, a resource. And so this one is a little bit more of like if you have the nudge, the feeling, the ping, if you will, to go and do something that feels kind of like out of the norm, out of the usual, out of your typical routine, do it anyway because you're probably being placed in the perfect time, in the perfect position for a coincidence to show up. So I'm going to give you one more example of this and how this has shown up for me lately. And so again, in the same vein of the childcare journey, I put the question out to my guides. My husband and I have really been wanting just a local babysitter to just come on the weekend so that we can have a date night every once in a while. We've had a really hard time trying to find one over the last few months. Just one who's responsible, who can show up, who has experience with a baby or with an infant rather. And so again, I did put the question out to my guides and knew that the answer would come back to me. But here's how I ended up in the right place at the right time to find this babysitter. So I think this was a couple of weeks ago already. I was out walking the dog by myself in a rare moment where I was walking the dog by myself. I actually don't know if I was by myself. I might have had the baby strapped to me. I'm often wearing the baby. So he might have been with me. But either way, I was walking the dog. And I usually take him on a very nor a typical route. We kind of go the same way. We go, down these particular streets in this particular order, just because I know it's the right length and it's easy and I don't have to think about it and I can listen to a podcast and, I just don't really think about it. And that particular day when I was walking through the neighborhood, and again, I had put that question out to my guides probably earlier that morning to my husband. I think I had said kind of incredulously, like, or just in angst of like, where are we going to find a babysitter? Spirit guides, find us a babysitter, right? A local babysitter, please. And and so while I was walking, I kind of just had this kind of like a whisper in the back of my head, this feeling of go this way instead of the way I normally go. They told me to turn left down this street that I never turn down in my neighborhood. It was actually called Blueberry Lane of all places, which was kind of cute. And I remember thinking that, like, oh, that's such a cute street name. And I was like, all right, I'll take a different route today. I'll go down this lane. And so as I was walking down this street, I noticed that there was a really big sign on the front lawn of one of the houses, and the sign said something about someone being I can't remember. She said your neighborhood babysitter or something like that. And it's just this young woman who it's like a part-time gig for her that she watches some of the kids in the neighborhood whenever anybody in the neighborhood needs like a date night type of babysitter. This is what she does on the side. And so she does like evenings and weekends and that kind of a thing, which is exactly what we were looking for. And she's a little bit older, so she's responsible enough to, care for a baby, and it was kind of perfect in there. Her phone number is right there. And I took a picture of the sign, and I called her the next day and set up a meeting with her. And so now we found somebody to care for our boys so that we could have a little date night every once in a while. And I never would have seen that sign had I always taken the usual route that I take. And this person, like, this street is just 2 streets away from where we live. I just never go down that street. And so if it wasn't for that little feeling, that little instinct of let's go a different way today, I never would have had that happen. Or I never would have seen that sign, and I never would have known about this babysitter. So that's really amazing. And again, it was such a coincidence, but also sort of like a whisper in the back of my head. Turn left here. Go down this street. Right. So we have to listen to those. And even if you don't know why, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's out of your normal routine, I would argue, especially if it's out of your normal routine, listen to it, do it, give it a try, because the worst that could happen is nothing happens. Right. But the other side is that maybe a big coincidence will show up, an opportunity will come your way. You'll meet someone, you'll talk to someone, you'll see a sign. Mine was literally a sign on someone's front lawn. That led me to our babysitter for date nights. So that one was really, really beautiful. So, guys, those are all of the things that quick, easy ways that you can connect with your guides or continue the conversation and communicate with them when you're short on time. So, I'm going to recap them really quickly. Number one is send questions out to your guides and let the answers come back to you in signs, symbols, and coincidences. Number two is pay attention to the creatures that cross your path. Number three is go for a walk in nature and have a conversation with yourself out loud. Number four is lean into your gut, pick two choices and see what feels best. And number five, listen to the whispers and trust that there are no coincidences. So I hope that these are helpful. I hope that you guys can really start to try some of these and lean into listening to those conversations or having those conversations with your guides on a regular basis, hearing the messages that they're always sending with you, and really stepping into and trusting that there really are no coincidences. So keep your eyes open, always be aware that your guides are guiding you, and trust that your guides are always putting you in the right place in the right time so that you can be guided in the right direction and on the path of truest alignment for yourself. Wishing you guys such a beautiful rest of the week and sending lots of love and light your way. Bye, guys.